COVID-19 has changed lives all around the world, some for better and some for worse. I remember I was in my history class when I first heard the news. We always begin the class discussing current events around the world and just things that were happening. I remember one morning we saw that there was a deadly virus in China that was spreading, and it was spreading fast. We saw that this virus was not only spreading in China, it was spreading in other parts of the world. So there was that kind of fear in the back of our heads that, hey, maybe this is gonna get to us, but no one ever really thought it would. As the mornings were going by, we saw that a case had hit America, and just more and more cases were coming to our country. And that's when things started to hit the fan and everybody was starting to get more and more scared. Around this time, we had spring break coming up, and I remember our history teacher had told us we had a test that next day. I vividly remember my history teacher saying, hey, don't forget to study for your test we have tomorrow. My friend next to me replied, if we're even here tomorrow. He laughed at her. He did not take her seriously. He thought she was overthinking the situation. And before you know it, the next day, we had to evacuate and basically take everything out of our lockers, clear everything as if it was the last day of school, because we really didn't know if we were coming back. We never came back after that.
I was at my school center for a test, and they gave everyone a hand sanitizer, and I didn't know why, and they told me about it. They explained it to me, and it kind of made sense, but yeah, that's where I first learned about it.
I was actually at Pioneer at the time, yeah. Everyone was worried about it, and then as for me, I had other things going on, so I just kind of put it off to the side about it, so.
I was at my school. I mean, people would talk about it, but most people didn't take it very seriously. You know, you hear about these kinds of things all the time, and usually it isn't really that big of a deal.
I didn't really care at first. I thought it wasn't really that important because, I don't know, it didn't seem that extreme, but then after a while it did start getting a bit more extreme.
I wasn't concerned about it too much because it didn't really hit Ohio yet, but once it hit Ohio, then it got a little more concerning, and then the schools started talking about closing. I, at the time, was actually wanting to stay in school. We were planning all these parties in my lab, and then finding out that school would be canceled, I'm like, yeah, no party, just stay home.
Personally, I was a little more worried than other people. I got over it. It just became a regular part of life. It didn't really faze me after a while, you know?
Things definitely got pretty dark for a while. The streets just kind of looked gloomy and empty. There was really no one out. We had a quarantine mandate for about 2 weeks, I believe, and people were raiding the shelves of toilet paper, paper towels, canned goods. It felt very surreal. It was kind of like the world just went quiet for a little bit. After the idea of quarantine got introduced, things were getting scary for a lot of people. Kids with abusive households were now having to stay home. People in abusive relationships were now having to stay with their partners all the time. Everyone was going bankrupt, businesses were closing, dining rooms were closing. You could no longer see strangers' faces on the street. You could no longer go get food with your friends. There was just something very empty about it. New addictions started to be picked up, whether that be social media, drugs, anxiety, depression rates went through the roof.
Didn't really change my life much because I was homeschooled, but after I went to Pioneer, it did change a bit because of the restrictions and things. I was worried about other students-wise, not really. I didn't really have any friends, but I was worried about some of my family that were at risk for COVID.
Made last year a lot easier. I had Wednesdays off. I loved last year. It was great. Didn't have to do anything. I had to wear masks all the time, which is irritating. But again, it was worth it for those easier classes, though. You get sick, you go home for 14 days, you come back.
It got me close to some of my friends. In a negative way, it got me not so close to half of them, so I guess it depends how you look at it. And one of them actually became my boyfriend, actually, so a relationship grew because of it in a way.
Loved ones are dying left and right. People that we don't even know are dying. And it's just very scary because this virus was highly contagious and we didn't know who would get it next. When we came back to school the next school year, Things were very different, to say the least. Masks were a requirement. The lunchroom, I remember walking in and seeing numbered barcodes on every other seat. You scan the barcode and you fill out your name and your information so that if you were to come in contact with someone with COVID, the people around you could quarantine. Assigned seats and attendance were being put in place a lot more than they were before. I remember it just kind of feeling a little odd, like we were being numbered. It felt very factorial. It was also hard to make friends because you really couldn't see other people's faces and you had to social distance, so making friends was definitely a challenge when we came back. There was a new way of being dismissed from class. Make sure you wipe down your desk, your keyboard, your computer. Just make sure your area is clean and then you are dismissed from class. So that was another precaution that we had to take. There is sanitary stations in each and every one of the classrooms. It usually has alcohol wipes, alcohol spray, gloves, masks. That was definitely a new concept to everybody. The election was coming up and people were getting very divided in the mix of all of this. Everyone was very angry and they just wanted someone to blame. People were at home all day, every day, looking at their phones, looking at the news, social media. Their perceptions of things that are going on were getting skewed. Things got very hateful and negative, even more than they were before. A vaccine had came out and a lot of people were skeptical of it and a lot of people said that you should get it. Basically, if you got it, you were a sheep. If you didn't get it, you were selfish. There was really no winning in the mix of all of this. At the end of the day, I just think that people are dying and we need to do what we can to help each other out. Instead of spread hate, spread love. We all have been dealt a bad hand and we need to stick together to deal with this.